7th, and it is 7:30. This is Ruth Masters' 80th birthday party. Look at all this. There must be 100 people in here. There's Ruth. I gotta have a look at my cake. And you see it, or maybe you can hold it up higher so you can show it. Or maybe you need to slide it too. It's still recording.
She will shout, she will yell. Even boulders she'll throw, so the bears will be safe. So you had better go to your houses to hide out and abandon your caper. For if Ruth takes the money, she'll write to the good cheer, Ruth, and we hope that you'll stay in fighting good spirit. Happy birthday.
Johnson, Eileen Smith, the Holistic Vet, Richard Porch.
Okay, thanks, Marlene. I have a couple of stories, but Ruth was in our nursery yesterday. Now, she always comes in and loads up her truck with plants to be adopted, right? These are ones that no one else is going to buy. They're tall, scrawny, unsaleable, but Ruth provides a loving home for all these cast-off plants that she can get really cheap. But anyway, so we always love it when she's present. Anyway, talking about litter, my favorite story about Ruth is, and maybe somebody said this before, but she was telling me one time about her hike over the Chilkoot Pass and how there's signs there saying, don't touch the garbage, because obviously it's got historical value. But she said to me, she said, you know, I think I got it all.
That's why the $1 building got to where it is right now. Ruth has brought to our valley.
That's Michael Winton.
So, if anybody would like to...
You know, everybody knows that
Lucy
she really
Bouchard.
likes animals and plants and things like that. And that she thinks that Comox Valley is overpopulated and all these people coming in. Almost 4 years ago, I moved here with my 2 kids. And up to this day, the person that did help me the most to get established and to just keep on going when the going was really tough, it was Ruth. She helped me the most of all the people I met in this valley, and she was so welcoming that, you know, I just want people to know that, I mean, everybody knows here, but not everybody outside knows here how nice she can be with newcomers and how generous. This is very... And so, I don't know, most of her friends are very smart, some of them are a bit food, some even break their necks on vacation, but as well, you know, I did have a little accident, but I have to mention that though, that when I dove in the water in front of all these people that were having fun, at least I didn't lose the top of my bathing suit. Ruth, I didn't bring your birthday present because it's at my home. It's 6 bags of dead leaves for you, so you come here. There we go.
Kel Kelly. They're presenting her with a scrapbook.
There, and I'm playing my harmonica. Incidentally, the gentleman on my right is the first person in Canada, and probably all of creation, to get arrested for defending a provincial park. And I had the honor, wasn't I there to play my harmonica, playing "O Canada, Glorious and Free"? He was shoveled into the paddy wagon and taken away to jail. Well, it's a lovely black bear, and I'm saying, he says, I'm here out of here, supposing she sings. When I visit people in the old folks' home, I always play my harmonica, of course, and I tell them I'm a modest musician, and my friends tell me I got plenty to be modest about it. Then I play them a hymn for their souls, and then I play them something cheerful. And but I always tell them if they think my music's dreadful, supposing I sang. That has them reflecting right there. But anyway, here I'm playing my harmonica while the bear is there, and that's what I sing. Supposing she sings, the bear says, I'm out of here. I don't know where they got all these pictures from. Oh, man. Well, I have no idea where they took all these pictures. Anyway, there I am, because I always have a plaid shirt on. Oh my gosh, can I sit down and let you go over it carefully? Oh, my signs. Beauty or the buck? You want to drink more mind poison? And, oh yeah, these are Strathcona Park blockade things. And we did flush the miners out of there, you know that. And the government of the day had originally said to them, well, there it is, guys, help yourselves. And they had flagging and mine claims all over the park. We got rid of them. But the park will always require very careful vigilance on everybody's part, because the looters and thieves aren't gone for good. They're just backed up until they can make a run for something else. So the job isn't done. They're scheming all the time to get more, and they're nibbling. So I can tell you that. Oh my gosh. I never was any pin-up girl to start with. Birthdays are sneaking up a bit. How can I sit down again?
I had to enclose this because I thought you'd get after seeing your scrapbook, I went through Ruth's scrapbook, I don't know how many times. And she always clips out things that are funny, people who have funny names, and you name it, nobody's spared. But I was looking at my co-op savings. This one's for your scrapbook too. So thank you, I love you.
Say that sometimes in trying to deal with what's happening, it's hard not to get really angry and bitter and down. And I've certainly been in the midst of that kind of energy. And Ruth has been such an inspiration to me that there's another way to do this. Just to be there and just to be so alive. I always feel with Ruth, no matter where she is, on blockade, whatever, she's having a great time. And that's the best gift to me. That's the biggest lesson. I love that. So thanks, Ruth.
Not yet.
Ready for the dessert?
No. Oh.
Is there anybody else who wants to say something? Everybody? Oh, Ruth wants to respond. 1 minute. Ruth wants to respond. She says she will be finished. Okay, let's see.
Salads can stay. Just this one.
Ruth, I hope I won't get arrested for this.
always kept being kind of modest about my age, as to the exact figures, because people look at me like I've been around since the flood. A couple of days ago, I was in the Edible Island, the new building up here on 6th Street, and the girl omitted to give me the 10% discount for being a senior. So I said to her, I'm an octogenarian. And she looked at me and she said, what's that? And she looked very startled because she obviously thought it was another cult here. I'm reminded actually way back when a few years ago the comedian Bob Hope was given a very prestigious award, and they made a wonderful, they gave a lot of very wonderful compliments to him, and when he got up to acknowledge it, he said, listening to all those wonderful things they said about me, he said, I thought to myself, oh, nobody could be that good. And he says, but they finally convinced me. It's been fun knowing all of you, and I don't see one single face that I don't like. It's like when I visit at the hospital and I just say to them quite plainly, if you were a mean bitch or a mean bastard, I would never come to see you. I know. But anyway, I really appreciate all the attention, which I don't deserve, of course. It's just actually, most of it's been fun, and this country is well worth looking after, and when I see some of the things that are happening, I'm just doing an item for our local rag, if it passes Frank Hovenden, that it's called Ecology, spelled with a K, and then it's recreating biodiversity, which I'm trying to do out of my property, and then I go on that how I'm getting rid of my dumb lawn, so I've laid that on for and then I'm doing another one, and it's about our wilderness, or our outdoor ethics leave quite a bit to be desired. And that one, if it passes Frank's inspection, will be published not in a fairly recent future. And I want to thank everybody. As I say, I was going to have a little snack at the pasta place with Steve and Marlene and Kel and Peggy, and it turned into this mighty celebration. I should mention that I do have a few little gifts that I always use. I always have a stock of them on hand that I use for little bribes and handouts and payoffs. And I use them to oil my way around. Well, I have a few that I have already made, and I've got a bucket here. The ladies get, all the ladies that don't have one, I think there may be enough, I don't know, for all the ladies to get one of my Tough Ladies mirrors. They're plate glass mirrors. I had this bunch cranked out by the glass company because my glass cutting is a bit wobbly. I get there, but it takes endless hours of grinding. But these are cut professionally, and they're a little better than the usual, so I have a bucket of them. And then I only got 2 of my bookmarks, and they're made out of an old coat, an old leather coat that a friend of mine found in the town dump. And so the first couple of fellows that grab them will get them if they want them. They have a personal inscription on them, of course. And I think that's about all I have to say. I'm absolutely overcome by the quality of the food and the number of people here, and I'm even having fun myself. Thank you, everybody, for your kind thoughts. And as I say, I have to really try to sharpen up, and I deserve all this flattery and attention. Thank you very much again, and Kel and Peggy and all the other conspirators. I didn't know a thing about this. And I met even Fireweek today. I met her, and the rotten little crook, she never even mentioned it.
We roughed this trailer out, and we got Ruth on the job with us, and we camped. I guess we were the first people to really put a major camp at the top of Bedwell Lane there, around Bedwell Lane. And we'd go out every day, and we'd go, we do so many hours a day, you know, we can't leave at 9-ish. And some guys stagger back at about 2 or 3 o'clock, you know, waiting for tea and had enough. And Ruth's group never came back till about...
Canada, my
It's all for you. This beautiful bear, maybe before we carve it up, if people want to come and have a look, haven't seen it. It was baked by Pat Newsom. It's a vegan chocolate cake. It's a vegan bear, I think. It's a work of art, so before we slice it up, if you want to come have a cake, that's
Washed with tender sentiments of that, tender sentiments of various sorts, characterized by 8 decades of exemplary behavior, marred by an occasional indiscretion, an isolated incident or two when virtue strayed momentarily from the straight and narrow path. Oh no! Rather, we have before us this evening an extraordinary example of a thoroughgoing and unrelenting deviance. An attitude of perverse and sustained rebelliousness. An attitude perfectly captured in a photograph we have at home, featuring this evening's esteemed subject, standing alone in a field of brush, alongside what I believe to be Cumberland's woebegone sewage outfall. She, dressed in her standard bushwhacker's mufti, a mischievous grin all over her face, while she holds aloft an enormous sign that shouts in large black letters, "Shit Creek." Canada, and eventually settling on the 20 acres where Ruth was born, and which she still occupies, and to which she has over the years, as she describes it, had a lovely procession of loggers, subdividers, and sharks of one kind or another out to see me about trying to get their hands on my property. But though she's landed gentry now, back in those early days, she says, we were church mouse poor, living in an uninsulated little shack with single board floors. She and her brother were the poor kids who had to walk to school in the rain, she says, because the family couldn't afford to live in town. She tells the story of being so poor when she was in high school that her mother and she had only one pair of shoes between them. Mama had a pair of sawed-off gumboots she had around the house in. One day, get to you later. One day, Ruth's walking home from school in the shoes. Her mother meets her halfway wearing her gumboots. They exchange footwear. Ruth heads home in the gumboots, and Mother heads off to town in the shoes. Hearing these doleful details, you begin to wonder, is there a class issue at work here? Was it financial distress in her formative years that instilled a certain rebelliousness of spirit, a certain cantankerousness of attitude? When Ruth was 13 years old, her father, a scholar and a great lover of nature, took a job building trail up above Bevan. And by way of a brief sidebar, let us note the fact that this case is one of the very few authentically documented instances proving that habitual trail making is a genetically inherited Thrilled by the mountains, Dad organizes a family outing. They pack their gear into whatever old bags are available. Ruth's first ever backpack is in fact an old flour sack. Lacking a family car, they set off to walk to Mount Beecher. They spend the night in a chilly, flea-ridden cabin high in the mountains, and the next morning hike to the summit of Beecher. And achieving the summit and gazing upon the mountain splendor all about, Ruth says, we were hooked. And thus began a tramontane existence that continues to this day. An instinct, whenever things get dicey, to take to the hills, like rustlers and outlaws. A lifelong and exhilarating quest to climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your flour sack. She fell in with Catherine Capes and Sid Williams in that whole legendary crowd. She joined the Mountaineering Club and took one day dangling helplessly on a precipitous rock face above a 300-foot drop. Death stared her in the face. But fate intervened in the person of the licentiously misguided guide, who reached down with one of his many horny hands and plucked our heroine to safety. And can you imagine in hindsight the number of developers, politicians, and sharks of every sort who would have paid that old lecher handsomely to let go? And perhaps in this cliffside near tragedy, an insightful psychiatrist might detect the defining moment at which, rescued from near certain death by a horny old geezer, our subject began her lifelong trek along the tributaries of Shit Creek. There can be absolutely no doubt that a discernible pattern of perversity had by this point established itself. And it's telling how frequently, for example, winning newspapers, the benefits of spreading septic tank sludge around your fruit trees. But like the Shit Creek sign, this was only a latter-day manifestation of a fascination with fecal matter apparent from her earliest years. She got another job up at Forbidden Plateau Lodge, and she recalls one of her primary duties was to sanitize the big sack full of Rice Krispies that were fed to the guests for breakfast. When mice got into the sack, she'd spread newspapers on the floor, pour out the sack of cereal, and meticulously separate the Rice Krispies from the mouse droppings. The guests would be none the wiser. I ask you, who else would end up with a job like that? And who's to say that this turgid work didn't leave a lasting scar on this impressionable young girl? Things went from bad to worse. The dogs of war were let loose all over Europe, and Ruth, convinced that Hitler himself was on his way over to get his hands on her 20 acres, joined the Service Corps and took to compulsive marching and drilling around the Comox Valley. At age 22, she enlists in the RCAF, is sent east and eventually to London, where she serves as administrative sergeant in the orderly room. And though we might indeed wonder how orderly the room could have been under the administration of such a sergeant, there is, for example, no record of whether Rice Krispies were fed to the flyers. There can be no doubt that living beneath the London Blitz produced a profound psychological shock to the nervous system of the little colonial from the Comox Valley. With bombs raining down all around her, she thinks to herself, geez, if they're not careful, those guys up there are going to kill us. Sometime later, it occurs to her that that's precisely what their bombers are attempting to do. To survive the nightly bombardment, she'd sleep curled up into a tight ball with one pillow over her head and another one under it. In other words, in precisely the same fetal position that years later you'd find loggers, politicians, and developers curled up in after a session with Ruth. But even curled unprotected beneath the London Blitz, she never lost touch with her excremental roots. And as she says now, only my briefs knew how scared I was. word you'd attach to Ruth Masters. The war, she says, was an adventure I wouldn't have missed for anything. I went out there scared of everyone and everything, and I came back, well, let's just say I'm not intimidated quite so easily. Not quite. She returns home with 3 medals on her chest. Oh, she says, they're just the kind they practically gave out with the suit. One medal was awarded for being in an area threatened by enemy action. And maybe it was this medal that went slightly to her head, because for the next half-century she spent most of her time fighting for natural areas threatened by enemy action. She enters what she herself describes as her bitching and squawking phase. In the 50s, we know, she joined with the great Roderick Haig Brown and the others in the battle for Buttle Lake. A fierce fight, fought decades before anyone had heard of an environmental movement. We fought bitterly, she says, and we lost the fight, but it was well worth the battle, because things weren't as bad as they would have been if we'd done nothing. Then came the highly suspicious Thelwood burn of '58, the Battle of West Min Mine in the 60s, then 4 decades of campaigns in the Walbron, the Sitica, Carmanah, Clackwood, the Parksville Flats, McDonald Wood, Comox Hill, Seal Bay, and the Black Bear killing fields, and on and on. And what a grand bunch of warriors they were. Bill and Catherine Capes, the Mortons, the Brooks, Jim Egan, Dear Melda, and so many more. When they weren't writing submissions and circulating petitions, half of them were up in the hills building trails. Oh, I've got a staggering bunch of submissions, Ruth says. Her file on Seal Bay alone weighs more than 5 pounds. But there's no record of anyone ever listening that I recall. To hear her tell it, you'd almost picture some timid little soul beautifully scratching out her submissions and submitting